The Pantera was a RMA sports car produced by the De Tomaso Car Company of Italy from 1971 to 1991, the last one being delivered to a customer in 1992. It was the automaker's most popular model, with over 7,000 units produced during its 20-year run. History: the car was designed by American designer Tom Tjada and replaced the De Tomaso Mangusta. Unlike the Mangusta, which employed a steel backbone chassis, the Pantera was a steel monocoque design, the first instance of De Tomaso using this construction technique. The Pantera logo included a version of Argentina's flag turned on its side with a T-shaped symbol that was the brand used by De Tomaso's Argentinian cattle ranching ancestors. The car made its public debut in Modena in March 1970 and was presented at the 1970 New York Motor Show a few weeks later. Approximately a year later the first production Panteras were sold, and production had been increased to 3 per day. The curious slat-backed seats which had attracted comment at the New York show were replaced by more conventional body-hugging sports car seats in the production cars. Legroom was generous but the pedals were offset and headroom was insufficient for drivers above approximately 6 ft tall. Reflecting its maker's transatlantic ambitions, the Pantera came with an abundance of standard features which appeared exotic in Europe, such as electric windows, air conditioning and even doors that buzz when open. By the time the Pantera reached production, the interior was in most respects well sorted, although resting an arm on the central console could lead to inadvertently activating the poorly located cigarette lighter. The first 1971 Panteras were powered by a Ford 351 Italian V8 engine that produced a severely underrated 330 HP. Stock dynos over the years proved that power was more along the lines of about 380 HP. The high torque provided by the Ford engine reduced the need for excessive gear changing at low speeds. This made the car much less demanding to drive in urban conditions than many of the locally built competitor products. The ZF transaxle used in the Mangusta was also used for the Pantera. A passenger in an early Pantera recorded that the mechanical noises emanating from the transaxle were more intrusive than the well-restrained engine noise. Another Italian car that shares the ZF transaxle is the Maserati Bora, also launched in 1971 although not yet available for sale. Power-assisted four-wheel disc brakes and rack and pinion steering were all standard equipment on the Pantera. The 1971 Pantera could accelerate to 60 mph in 5.5 seconds according to Car and Driver. In the summer of 1971, a visitor to the De Tomaso plant at Modena identified two different types of Pantera awaiting shipment, being respectively the European and American versions. From outside, the principal differences were the larger tail lamps on the cars destined for America, along with addition of corner marker lamps. The visitor was impressed by the large number of cars awaiting shipment. In reality, spending the best part of a year under dust covers in a series of large hangars probably did nothing for the cash flow of the business or the condition of some of the cars by the time they crossed the Atlantic. Late in 1971, Ford began importing Panteras for the American market to be sold through its Lincoln Mercury dealers. The first 75 cars were simply European imports and are known for their push-button door handles and hand-built carrozzeria Vignale bodies. A total of 1,007 Panteras reached the United States that first year. These cars were poorly built, and several Panteras broke down during testing on Ford's test track. Early crash testing at UCLA showed that safety cage engineering was not very well understood in the 1970s. Rust-proofing was minimal on these early cars, and the quality of fit and finish was poor, with large amounts of body solder being used to cover body panel flaws. Notably, Elvis Presley once fired a gun at his Pantera after it would not start. Several modifications were made for the 1972 model year Panteras. A new 4-bolt main Cleveland engine, also 351 in 3, was used with lower compression ratio but with more aggressive camshaft timing. Many other engine changes were made, including the use of a factory exhaust header. The Lusso Pantera L was also introduced, in August 1972 as a 1972 1/2 model. It featured a large black single front bumper for the U.S. market, rather than the separate bumperette still used abroad, as well as a 248 HP Cleveland engine. During 1973 the dash was changed, going from two separate pods for the gauges to a unified unit with the dials angled towards the driver. The US version 1974 Panther GTS featured GTS badging but not the higher compression, solid lifter engine of its European GTS cousin. Ford ended their importation to the US in 1975, having sold around 5,500 cars. De Tomaso continued to build the car in ever-escalating forms of performance and luxury for almost 2 decades for sale in the rest of the world. A small number of Panthers was imported to the U.S. by gray market importers in the 1980s, notably Panther America and A. Mary Sport. In 1980, beginning with chassis number 9000 according to De Tomaso themselves, the chassis was completely revisioned. From May 1980 the lineup included the GT5, which had bonded and riveted on fiberglass wheel arch extensions, and from November 1984 the GT5S model which had blended arches and a distinctive wide-body look. The GT5 also incorporated better brakes, a more luxurious interior, much larger wheels and tires, and the fiberglass body kit also included an air dam and side skirts. Production of the wide-body GT5 continued until 1985, when the GT5S replaced the GT5. Although the factory has not made its records available, an analysis based on vehicle identification numbers by the Panther Owners Club of America late model registrar has shown that fewer than 252 GT5 Panthers were likely to have been built. The GT5S featured single-piece flared steel fenders instead of the GT5's riveted on fiberglass flares, and a smaller steel front air dam. The S in the GT5S name stood for steel. Otherwise the GT5S was largely identical to the GT5. The POCA 9000 series registrar's van analysis indicates that fewer than 183 GT5S Panthers were built. Concurrent GTS production continued, on a custom order and very limited basis, until the late 1980s. The car continued to use a Ford V8 engine, although in 1988, when the supply of Ford 351 Cleveland engines from Australia ran out, De Tomaso began installing Ford 351 Windsor engines in the Panther instead. For 1990 the 351 was changed to the Ford 302 cubic inches. Incorporating a Marcello Gandini facelift, suspension redesign, partial chassis redesign and a new, smaller engine, the Panther 90C model was introduced in 1990. Only 38 90C models were sold before the Panther was finally phased out in 1993 to make way for the radical, carbon fiber-bodied Gara. Some say 41 were built, of which 4 were Targa models. The Targas were converted by PAVC directly off the production lines. In all, about 7,200 Panthers were built. Panther SI, after 20 years of production, De Tomaso turned to Marcello Gandini to do a major restyling of the production model. 41 units were built of the Panther SI until production stopped in 1993. In the UK, the model was sold as Panther 90. Specifications. 1971 specifications, engine 351 in 3 Cleveland V8, power, 330 HP, curb weight, 3,123 lb, wheelbase, 98.4 in, front track, 57.0 in, rear track, 58.0 in, length, 158.0 in, width, 67.0 in, height, 43.4 in, brakes, front 332x32 ventilated and cross-drilled. Rear, 314x28 ventilated/71 Panthers had 15 inches wheels, and brake rotors were smaller than 300 ohm. Fuel consumption, 15 mpg. Maximum speed, 159 mph. Notes. External links, August, 1971, Car and Driver, Panther Owners Club of America, the De Tomaso Registry, Tomaso Pantera Review, Ron Hyde's De Tomaso Cars page.